So probably some people are going to be in Zoom, some other people are going to be watching YouTube live, okay?
Okay.
All right. You know, it's been really messy since all the students, I mean, since the schools were not prepared for this situation. So it's very interesting because they have
Sure.
been adapting. And it's funny because most of the projects that they were doing throughout the school year with us, they just left the prototypes, they just left everything that they were doing in the classroom. So some of them have had difficulties on continuing doing the online projects, not only the projects but the school, because most of the schools or very few schools were really prepared for having an
Sure.
online education. So it's been challenging, but let's see how it goes. Okay, and I'm gonna share you, by the way, a link to some of the projects, so you can evaluate them or you can check them. If you want to see, if you want to evaluate them, just let me know, and I can just share you the evaluation form. Let me just.
Thank you. Eric, it is a little bit hard to hear you. Can you hear me all right?
I hear you, bro.
Okay.
Better now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Somehow my micro. Oh, yeah. Better now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool.
Eric, you are muted.
Okay, guys. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to be waiting 1 more minute to wait for some people that are going to be joining the conference. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Elijah Henry. He's an investor, by the way. He's a J investor. He's also a writer, and he has been investing in some other companies through online platforms mainly. He's going to speak about some very interesting topic, which is 3 things that I wish I had understood before high school. So just feel free to ask questions. Raise your hand, ask questions, and we will be asking these questions to him once he finishes. So, Elijah,
Just go ahead. Thank you very much for being part of this keynote speaking, and also about to be part of Jay. So it's an honor to have you here. Just go ahead.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Melissa. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you for the honor of being invited here. Thank you also for the opportunity to invest in the future of these young people by investing in Jay. I really appreciate that. It's outstanding. I understand we have parents, teachers, and some other folks here today. I want to thank you. Thank you, parents, teachers, and everyone else who supports these young people and who made sure that they had this opportunity to take advantage of that. It's great that you've been able to make this happen for them. And I also want to thank the young people of Jay for your time and for your attention. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to what I have to say. I want to talk to you about a few things that I wish I had understood better, at least by my first major graduation, which for me was high school. You guys have had a great opportunity to do some stuff that I have never been able to do. But I certainly wish I had understood these things better. By the time I left high school, it would have been better to understand them better a whole lot sooner than that even. The first one is budgeting. And you might think that budgeting is not very relevant to you, but I want to tell you that if you have received any money in the last year, or you think you might receive any even within the next year, budgeting will help you manage that money. It's relevant for all of us. My personal history of budgeting has not always been very smooth. In my early childhood, we earned 1 penny per chore that we did. That took quite a while to add up. Later, we got $1 per week. We could get a little bit more if we worked hard and did some extra chores, and we could get a lot less if we forgot to do some chores. When I was much older, I was allowed to do some odd jobs, and I was able to make some more money. All through this time, my budgeting was basically just split between giving to the church and saving. But after saving it, I eventually just spent it, and I never really got anywhere with it. Some of that spending was frivolous, some of it was much better, but it didn't advance me very far. I didn't have a long-term goal that I was saving for. Then I got to college, and my budgeting was still pretty much split between giving, again, giving to my church, and saving/spending. My expenses, of course, were a lot higher in college. I worked my way through college and graduated debt-free. My expenses were fairly consistent. I could have done a budget, but I didn't do it very well. It was, again, basically the old habits that I had built of just giving to the church and then saving and eventually spending. So I was not controlling my money very well. Because I wasn't controlling it well, I wasn't budgeting, I never really knew how much I was going to need, and therefore I didn't know how much I could spend in the meantime. Budgeting really does empower you. It's not just a restriction on how you spend your money, it empowers you to spend it on things that you want to or need to spend it on. It was not until after college that I finally got a handle on my money. I started controlling it consistently and saving for serious goals, not just saving, but also investing. Because I knew how much I could afford for everything, it gave me the freedom to spend that and spend on things just for fun. I want to encourage you, as you learn about budgeting and you practice your own budgeting practices, to be flexible. Most of us have some variation in how much money comes in and what our expenses are over any given period of time, and you need to be flexible in how that goes when your budget meets your reality. When it comes to your spending, in your discretionary spending, I suggest choosing experiences over objects. Counterintuitively, spending on experiences will stay with you longer. When an object might last longer physically, but it doesn't last as long to you. It doesn't mean as much to you for the long term. When you have an experience, you build a memory and it stays with you forever. When it comes to saving, choose things that matter. Don't just save up for another frivolous object, save up for something meaningful, maybe Maybe your first car, maybe going to college, maybe a great experience that you'll remember forever. One of the less frivolous things that I spent on when I was young was going to camp in the summer. I would save up. I would go to a very cheap church camp with our church youth group, and I built memories and experiences that stay with me even to this day. I've mentioned giving a few times. It's very important. It really is. When you just spend your money on yourself, your life is not nearly as full. When you give back, you'll experience a much more full life. Your life will be more fulfilled. Whether you give to your church or a charity that means a lot to you, it will make a big difference in your life to give back on a regular basis. Investing. Investing goes along with saving. When you make your money work for you, when your money grows while you sleep, you are on the path to financial wealth. Some important things to remember when you are investing. You need to find your personal balance between risk and return. When you are very young and you are investing and saving for a long time horizon, you can probably tolerate a lot of risk, and you should expect a substantial return for that. A couple of other major points to consider with investing are diversification and a dollar cost averaging. Perhaps you call it peso cost averaging in Mexico, I don't know, but we call it dollar cost averaging. I was reading my Bible recently. It was translated 400 years ago from a text 3,000 years old. The wisest man to ever walk the earth, Solomon, he talked about this stuff, diversification and dollar cost averaging. He says, just keep investing, invest in a variety of things because you never know which investment will succeed or fail or when they will do so. That's the essence of diversification, investing in a lot of things, and dollar cost averaging. Just keep putting money into it on a regular basis every chance you get. You never know when it's going to work out or whether it will work out. Investing has helped me build some of my most valuable professional relationships, including with Eric and Melissa by investing in Jay, as well as some other companies. So let's talk about relationships now. There's a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's widely attributed to somebody in Africa. Maybe it didn't really come from there, but it's a great saying nonetheless. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Relationships in all aspects of life are vitally important. I didn't used to understand this. I thought that relationships were not so important. I thought that personal excellence was really all that mattered. I thought that if I was good enough, then it didn't matter who supported me, who was with me. I could do it all on my own. And there's a little bit of truth in that, but there's much more truth in building a team and depending on people around you. People helping people make the world go round. If people don't like you, if you don't build a relationship with them, they won't work with you or help you if they can possibly avoid it. I want to share something with you. I have personally been fired from multiple positions where I was objectively a top performer because I failed to cultivate relationships properly and no one wanted to work with me. This happened several times. It took me a while to really understand how important relationships were. Family. Let's talk about family relationships. You're connected to your family for better or worse in a way that you will never be connected to anybody else. This makes family relationships extremely important. I don't think you need me to tell you not to neglect those. Friends. Your relationships with your friends. Very few are as close as family, and they don't always stay that way. When I was in high school, I had several friends that I considered closer than family. Today, I rarely talk to them. I still talk to them occasionally, but I talk to my family a whole lot more often. The relationship with my family has lasted much longer than the relationships with the friends that I thought were as close as family. Professional relationships. We've talked about this a little bit. It could involve investing money, but it could also involve investing time. It takes time to invest in any relationship. When you're investing in building your professional relationships, be willing to help each other out, but you need to know where to draw the line between professional relationship building and needing to make a profit. When you're talking about professional relationships, you're talking about business. And of course, the essence of business is solving people's problems profitably. And you need to know your own personal line between when you're helping somebody out to build a relationship and when what you're being asked to do is something that you need to be paid for. And again, that's a personal decision that only you can make, but you need to be aware of that line so you are not taken advantage of. The caveat, the major caveat that I really want you to listen to about all of this relationship discussion: under all circumstances, maintain your personal integrity and remain true to your value system. No relationship is worth sacrificing your moral code. I have come close to losing relationships over integrity disputes, but it did all work out well in the end. Not very long ago, I had a team member. We had been working on a team for quite some time, and she wanted me to do something that violated my personal value system. She wanted me to lie to cover a minor thing for another one of our teammates, and I was not willing to do that. I was not going to violate my personal integrity to cover for him. And this almost tore the team apart. I almost lost my relationship with her, and it was pretty bad. It was pretty painful, but I maintained my personal integrity. I have remained true to my value system. A few months later, we ended up on another team, again, working close together. And at this point, we were able to come back together. She realized that despite our disagreements, she knew that she could trust me. And she had come to a point in her life where she needed somebody that she could trust. And we were able to build a relationship again, and we are now closer than ever. But even if that hadn't worked out well, even if I had lost that relationship forever, even if everything had fallen apart, the important thing was that I maintained my integrity. I remained true to my value system. I did not lie to cover up for somebody else. In all circumstances, effective communication is key to relationship building, and storytelling is the epitome of effective communication. I have personally invested in a company largely because of the founding team's skill in telling their story. Let's talk about that, storytelling. It's the last thing I want to talk to you about. We talked about budgeting, we talked about relationships, and we talked about storytelling. We're talking now about storytelling. Storytelling, it's something that I've recently come to understand the importance of, and therefore I still haven't developed this very well. So I don't have as much experience with this as I do the other things, but I've realized how important it is. There are stories that you tell yourself. There are stories that you tell others. Let's talk about some of both of those. Stories about your past. This covers both of those. Stories you tell others and stories you tell yourself. Think about your past failures. We've all had failures. If you have had no failures, then you haven't been expanding your horizons very well. You've not been pushing yourself hard. But I believe that you young people in J, you've had a lot of opportunities, and I believe that you have been pushing yourself very well. So undoubtedly, you've had some failures in your past. Do you tell yourself that those were tragedies, that those failures were something terrible that you can never get past? Or do you tell yourself the story that those were learning opportunities? Perhaps you haven't really thought about what your failures have taught you, and I strongly encourage you to do so. If you don't think about what you could learn from your failures, then it is a tragedy, a tragic waste of a learning opportunity. So think about that. When you think about your past, when you think about your successes and your failures, it's important to tell yourself the story of what you have learned from those. Stories you tell others about your past. You may eventually find yourself at a job interview with an embarrassingly long gap in your employment record. How you frame that gap, how you tell that story can make the difference between getting the job and having an even longer employment gap. It's all in how you tell the story, and I'm certainly not saying to lie. It's nothing like that. But you can frame it as a learning experience. You can frame it as something that you have grown from, or you can frame it as something where other people picked on you and you made mistakes that you haven't learned from, and nothing good has come from this past. When I talked to you earlier about getting fired from various positions, I could have told you the story about the people in charge firing me unjustly, or people deciding not to like me for no reason at all. Instead, I told you the story about my failure to cultivate relationships properly, and my objective excellence at the tasks at hand being insufficient to save me from those failures. So the one story I could have told you wouldn't have got me anywhere, wouldn't have got me anywhere. The story that I did tell you, it's about how I was able to learn and how I was able to grow from that past. Let's move on to stories about your present. Who are you? You are what you repeatedly do. You are what you repeatedly do. Do you lead repeatedly? If you do, you are a leader. Do you lie repeatedly? If you do, you are a liar. You have to frame for yourself in your mind your identity and behave accordingly. Think of yourself as a scientist, a leader, a business professional, and ask yourself what such a person would do in your circumstances. Act accordingly, do that repeatedly, and you will become what you have framed for yourself in your mind. Let's talk about stories about your future. They haven't happened yet. Think 5 or 10 years into the future, whatever period of time works for you, and write down the story of your life up to that point. It's an outstanding exercise in imagination and planning. It forces you to think about where you want to be and what you want to have accomplished. More than that, it forces you to think about the steps you will take to get there. Putting it in a story format will bring it to life for you and make it more real. And by the way, it's okay when your goals change and you change your story, but this is a great exercise that will help you get to where you want to be. So we've talked about budgeting. We've talked about how you can use it to control your money and even to build relationships. We talked about relationships and how important they are in every aspect of life. We talked about how communication is essential for relationships and storytelling is perhaps the highest form of communication. Storytelling empowers you to control your perspective on the past, the present, and the future. You have been empowered by what you have learned and experienced at Jay, and I trust that I have helped empower you at least a little bit more by sharing my perspective with you today. And with that, Eric, I'm going to turn this over to you now.
Thank you, Laya. I appreciate the very interesting talk. I have a few questions, and I will invite all the people in the audience to ask or raise their hand or ask questions through the chat, so I can just pose those questions to Laya. I would like to ask you, Laya, why you selected the budgeting as kind of the first thing to say to the people?
Yeah, so, well, mainly because it was the first thing that came to mind. It's over a long period of time, it may be the one that is easiest to control, easiest to make a difference in your life. You can start budgeting today and you can see an immediate impact. If you now storytelling that takes time. That's a skill that you have to build. Building relationships, you never stop learning that. Budgeting, you can start learning it today, you can start putting it into practice today, and you can start seeing an effect on your life today.
Okay. And also, can you just expand more on the relationships? I mean, that's an important topic, but you mentioned in kind of a business point of view and also family and friends point of view. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
Sure, yeah. Like I said, I've had some significant relationship failures in the past, and it took me a long time to realize how important it was that I could not get by on my own. I've always been, I've been good at a lot of stuff, and I thought I could make my life work with just that. But it turns out that you really do need people. You need a team. You need a network. You need people around you that you can go to, that you can depend on, that you can help, and that they can help you. And you really can't get as far as you would like without that. None of us are good enough to go it alone. We really need people to help us. We like to watch, a lot of us like to watch movies about a hero who he saves the day all by himself and doesn't need anybody. But in real life, it doesn't work that way. We all need help. We all need people around us.
Okay, great. Okay, I have a few more questions, but I'm waiting if somebody from the audience would like to say something or ask something. I mean, do you have kind of a tip on the budgeting? I'm just going back to budgeting. Do you have a tip on either saving or what would be a first step for somebody that is in mid school, high school? What would you recommend?
Sure. So start by figuring out your expenses. At that age, you may not have a lot of expenses, so figure out who you want to give to. I think that's a really important part of budgeting, giving back, not just keeping all your money for yourself. And so set aside some for that. And with the rest of it, you may not have expenses at that age, but you can have goals. And you need to think about your time horizon for your goals. Think about where you want to be. Maybe you want to go to college in 5 or 10 years, or however long that might take you. And you can start putting aside money for that. Then you need to find a place to save or invest that matches that time horizon. It might be a savings account. Those pay extraordinarily low interest these days. It might be something else. You might be able to find bonds or whatever. Again, you have to think about your time horizon. If you're going off to college in a year, then you definitely need something that you can get the money back in a year. If you have a while longer, then maybe you can afford some more risk. But there are a lot of instruments out there that you can get into these days. Maybe you only have a few dollars. I've been able to find bonds that you can start with $10. There are, let's see, there are investment platforms that allow you to invest for very low amounts of money. I can talk about more of those. The students are welcome to reach out to me over LinkedIn. That's perfectly fine. And if they message me on LinkedIn, I can share with them some of the investments that I like, and we can talk about their their personal needs, and I can help give some unprofessional advice on that. I'm not a professional financial advisor, but I can share what's worked with me and talk about what might work for them.
Great, great. I got a question. Another question from Melissa is, being in school, what they can do to launch a business, a fast business?
To launch a business in school. I have personally never launched a business. I've studied entrepreneurship. I've invested in businesses, but I've never done that myself. So I don't think I'm qualified to answer that. I could throw some stuff out there. I had a lemonade stand when I was a kid. It didn't do very well. We had, somebody give us money to buy the lemons and the sugar, and I don't think we even made enough money to pay them back. So I can't say I'm a successful businessman, but I think Eric might have had more success with that, so he might be a better person to ask that question to.
Okay, then a question: in what kind of business you are investing in then?
I invest in a lot of businesses. I don't have a particular sector or industry that I really focus on. I do like real estate. That's not exactly a business, but I invest in several real estate platforms. Let's see, as far as businesses that I invest in, I like to invest in startups. I put a bit of money in startups every month. Not too long ago, I invested in Jay. I've invested in, let's say I invested in a food company called Ample Foods. I've invested in, I've got a list. I can't think of them all off the top of my head, but I can definitely share that with you later. I've invested in a variety, and I look for what I'm looking for when I invest in a business. I'm personally looking for something that I think has the potential to become very big, justifying the risk of investing in a very early stage. I especially look for platforms because I believe in that kind of a business model. I think it's a high potential model for the world and the market that we live in today. But I don't have a particular business that I'm looking for. I just look for whether the business seems to make sense to me, and I definitely look at the people. I said earlier, I've invested in a company. This one was R3 Printing. It's a 3D printing company, and I invested in them largely because of their ability to tell a story. They were able to tell the story of why the market needed their product and how they were going to solve that problem. And I'm like, these people, they might not be the best 3D printing company out there, but they can tell a really good story about who they are and what they're doing. And I think that they will at least be able to find more investors. I think they will be able to leverage their storytelling and their abilities to grow. So I invested in them, and they are doing well. They're one of my favorite investments so far. Yeah, yeah.
Good. And what do you think about investing in the youth? I mean, in some kids doing great innovations and having great ideas. What do you think about it?
I would definitely be open to hearing more. I'm interested. I think that I do not personally draw a hard line between youth and adults. I think that when you are ready to move forward to the next step in your life, you should be allowed and able to do that. I have a 2-year-old son, and we've always treated him as much like an adult as we could. And he's growing. He's very smart. He understands far more than people tend to give credit to 2-year-olds for. And that, I don't think that changes. When you treat somebody like an adult, I think that they are much more willing to act like an adult and achieve like an adult. So I would certainly not discount investing in a youth because of their age. I would treat them with the same standards that I would anybody else. In fact, come to think of it, the very first investment that I made in a startup was in a company founded by a child. It's a company. They're bringing when you're playing video games or computer games, all the different games have their own currency, and if you leave one and go to the other, then you leave the money that you left. You leave the money in the one game, and sometimes people are spending real money to get the game currency. So this company is solving that problem by making one currency that you can spend on all the games, all the platforms. So that was the very first one that I invested in. The founder is, I think he was 12 years old at the time. He's a little bit older now, but yeah, I'm definitely open to investing in youth.
Okay, there is a question from the audience. Is asking, if I want to start investing, what would you recommend as a beginner to start with?
That really depends on how much you have to invest, and again, what your time horizon is and what your risk profile is. And yeah, I would need a lot more information to say anything about that. If you have $10, then maybe you could invest in a bond that pays off in a year. If you have 50, you could invest in, I know I invest in a platform that would give you enough to invest in 5 different houses, and the loans would all pay off over the next several months. And if you have 100, you can invest in a lot of the companies that Jay is raising on the companies on the platform that Jay is raising on. So if you have more than that, then you have more options. And again, you have to consider your own personal time horizon and your risk profile, how much risk you're willing to take.
Okay, there is another one that is, I mean, it's kind of repeating what you were saying, but do you invest only in companies like Jay or in stocks, funds, or Forex and things like this?
Sure. So I invest every month in companies like Jay, startups. That's a high risk, high return option with a pretty long time horizon. When you invest in a startup, you don't expect to see a return for 5-10 years, and a lot of the time your startups will go to zero. Some will break even and some will be home runs. You'll make a lot of money. I do invest in stocks. I invest in very few individual stocks. I much prefer ETFs. The platform that I invest in does not allow investing in mutual funds, and that's okay with me. I prefer ETFs because they're basically a cheaper version of mutual funds. They're nearly always cheaper, and they cover approximately the same ground as mutual funds and mostly work the same way. Forex, I've invested a little bit in Forex, and it was actually a platform that it was supposed to be automatic Forex, including cryptocurrency. And I put a little bit in that and I made a lot of money really fast, and then it went to zero. I literally lost everything that I put into that. So I'm open to investing in Forex. I'm not enthusiastic about it. I don't think that automatic Forex works. The people that were doing that were working really hard, and I think that if it could have been done, they would have done it. I know some people who invest in regular Forex and they manage it themselves, and that's an incredibly grueling job. They spend about 20 hours a day with computer monitors in every room of their house so they can watch the markets every single second, and they make a lot of money and they lose a lot of money, and over time they give very good returns, but their minimum investment is more than it would make sense for me to put into that right now. So I think I will invest in Forex in the future, but right now I'm not investing in Forex. I invest largely in ETFs, real estate, and startups like Jay. Eric,
I think there is no more questions, Elia.
Okay.
I appreciate very much your time, and also all what you told us is very important. All this investment also is very important because kids are very attracted on having people like you investing in their companies. And probably you will have time. Elijah is on the LinkedIn. I mean, I think we included in the presentation we sent. If not, we are going to be sending that to your teacher so you can contact him directly and tell you about your products. Anyway, he has an access to your projects and he's going to be taking a look to them also. So let's see what he says about them. Okay. So Elijah, thank you very much. And
thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So we just keep in touch, my friend.
Sure.
And I know that you are just coming to Mexico. You don't mention that.
Yeah.
Playa, right?
Yeah. I'm moving to Mexico tomorrow. We've had a lot going on the last few days, getting ready for that. But we're excited. We're going to move to Mexico and live there for a while. I don't know how long, but we're excited.
Great. Anything we can help, we are going to be happy to do it. Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, all the audience, and we just keep in touch. The next conference will start in at 11 our time. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Laya.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.